Once again, thank you very much for registering and taking time to attend our webcast today, Integrating Environmental Performance and Material Health Reporting. A hot topic from both perspectives, environmental performance reporting and material health reporting. And today with me, we have our special guest, Tara Blank from Elixir Environmental, representing expertise in material health analysis and reporting, and together we'll get into that technical detail and discuss how that information can then best be used. As promised in the webcast invitation, we will review the range of options for earning credits in the eco-label systems. We'll have a focus on LEED and talk about the value to manufacturers for doing this kind of environmental reporting, because clearly, based on the uptake in the industry and the representation of attendees here in the webcast, many manufacturers are trying to determine how to get started, what type of reporting to get started with really the bottom line being, where's the value in investing the time and expense for doing the analysis and sharing the information. Today's outline for the agenda will include our introductions. We'll turn it over to Tara, who will dive into material health analysis and information. I'll talk about environmental performance reporting, and then segue into how we have developed an opportunity for manufacturers to provide both kinds of information in a streamlined way, all in one place. And both Tara and I want to just get it right out there that while the deadline for LEED version 3 to end and LEED v4 to start has been pushed out, manufacturers who are providing this type of information today helps their customers earn those LEED v4 pilot credits in LEED v3 now. So I'd like to turn it over to Tara to introduce herself and dive into our content.
All right, thanks, Terry. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you joined us. I'm Tara Blank with Elixir Environmental. We work with building product manufacturers to develop material disclosure, such as the Health Product Declaration. We also work to educate design professionals on transparency and disclosure issues by developing AIA and GBCI registered courses with our affiliate company, GreenScreen, which many of you may be familiar with. Is my screen showing up all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so today we are going to talk about two types of transparency reports, those disclosing the environmental performance of building products, and also those looking at material health. Now, since you're here, chances are that you're familiar with the relatively recent push for increased product transparency and disclosure. And there are a number of factors that are contributing to this push, with, of course, the latest version of LEED being arguably the greatest influence. Now, every new version of LEED tries to move the market out of its comfort zone to reach a new standard for the building industry. But LEED version 4 includes some really revolutionary changes, especially in the materials and resources category. And these are changes that will directly impact product manufacturers. So LEED version 4 puts a much greater emphasis on product transparency and disclosure than did any of the previous versions. Now, some of these credits are looking at how materials contribute to environmental impacts over the course of their life cycle, with documentation like life cycle assessment and environmental product declarations. But LEED is also interested in transparency of material contents and how these affect human health. Now, it turns out that it's not just LEED v4 that's driving the demand for product transparency. A number of the top AEC firms in the country have taken it upon themselves to request this sort of documentation from product manufacturers. And if you're a manufacturer out there, you may have received a letter such as one of these. Firms like HDR, Perkins & Will, Canon Design have already sent letters to manufacturers saying that soon they will no longer even consider specifying products that don't at the very least have a health product declaration. So it's becoming pretty obvious that those manufacturers who are ahead of the curve, who have already developed this documentation, will be at an advantage over those who continue to kind of wait and see if this whole transparency thing will just blow over. From everything that we've seen, it looks like it's definitely here to stay. Okay, so let's jump into the new credits in the Materials and Resources category of LEED v4. Now, these are the credits that directly relate to product transparency, and they all fall under this umbrella: building product disclosure and optimization. Now, this means that there is both a disclosure or transparency aspect to each credit, as well as an emphasis on optimization or improvement. So there are credits related to environmental product declarations, which Terry will go into in more detail in the second part of the presentation, and also a credit that looks at sourcing of raw materials. But it's this last one that's the credit for material ingredients, and so that's the one that we will be focusing on now. All right, so there are two options available for the material ingredient credit. The first is for material ingredient reporting. So this is the transparency or disclosure aspect. The requirement for this option is to use at least 20 different permanently installed products from at least 5 different manufacturers that have material ingredient documentation available. Now, this documentation must demonstrate the chemical inventory of the product to at least 0.1% or 1,000 parts per million. Now, as a point of reference, a typical MSDS only discloses down to 10,000 parts per million for most chemicals. There are 3 possibilities available for achieving this credit: a manufacturer inventory, the health product declaration, and then cradle-to-cradle certification. Now, cradle-to-cradle is a great certification system, and I really encourage all of you to learn more about it. But for the sake of today's presentation and the time that we're allotted, we'll only look at these first two, the manufacturer inventory and the HPD. Okay, so the other option for excuse me, this credit is material ingredient optimization. Now, in this one, at least 25% by cost of the total value of permanently installed products must have a complete chemical inventory, again, like the HPD, this time down to 100 parts per million, or 0.01%. And there must also be no GreenScreen benchmark 1 hazards present in the product. Now, GreenScreen really seems to be at the heart of several of these material health disclosures. So let me take a minute to talk about what this is. GreenScreen is a hazard assessment methodology that was developed by the nonprofit Clean Production Action. So it looks at the environmental fate, environmental health or ecotoxicity, human health, and physical hazards of chemicals. GreenScreen then assigns chemicals to one of 4 benchmarks based on the level of persistence, bioaccumulation, and toxicity according to the best available data. So starting at the bottom, benchmark 1 in red indicates those chemicals of high concern that should be avoided whenever possible. Moving up through benchmark 2 and benchmark 3, these are a bit safer, but there's still room for improvement. And then benchmark 4 in green at the top, these are considered the safer chemicals, the ones that are preferred to be used in products because of their long track record of safety. All right, so going back to the idea of product transparency, let's talk about why we need material ingredient disclosure in the building industry at all. So we know there are problems with our exposure to some chemicals, but unfortunately, most people have very little idea of what materials they actually interact with every single day, nor do they have any clue as to what effects those materials might have on their health. And of course, the idea of learning about and keeping track of these thousands of materials is overwhelming, to say the least. But when we do start diving into the various chemicals and their hazards, we start seeing references to those that are potentially carcinogenic or mutagenic, those that are associated with neurotoxicity, endocrine disruption, or listed as reproductive or developmental toxicants. Now, when we're talking about known health effects, it turns out that we actually know very little about most of the 80,000 some odd chemicals that are being used in today's marketplace. So clearly, we need much more research to increase our knowledge base and to give us a better idea of the changes that need to be made in our material choices. But before we can even do this, we first need to be aware of what chemicals and materials that we actually use. Now, this can obviously be complicated by the presence of proprietary data, as well as long and now globalized supply chains, meaning that it's not just the consumer that's often left in the dark. A lot of times, suppliers and even manufacturers don't know every ingredient in their product. Okay, so let's think about how material ingredient disclosure can help consumers as well as the building industry as a whole. Now, obviously, documentation like the Health Product Declaration will increase awareness of the hazards that are associated with these various chemicals and products, and not just among consumers, but again, by manufacturers as well. And once a manufacturer understands that there is an issue with their product, they may be more likely to consider safer alternatives. If these alternatives aren't yet available, the knowledge that is made public through these disclosures will hopefully help to spur innovation and to create safer chemicals and materials. Now, taken together, we should expect to see a shift towards healthier building products as manufacturers continue to respond to these demands from their customers. All right, so with all of that in mind, let's dive into the first material disclosure that we'll talk about, which is the Health Product Declaration, or HPD. Now, the HPD was developed as a means to standardize material ingredient reporting. It gives customers access to information about a product's contents and associated health data, meaning that designers and specifiers can make even more informed decisions when selecting building products. Now, I do want to emphasize that the HPD is not actually an eco-label, since no benchmarks have to be met to develop this document. So the entire spectrum of building products, from those that use only the safest materials to those that contain some of the worst offenders in terms of health and safety, can all develop HPDs. So the HPD is more about transparency and disclosure and not about inherent judgment. Now, the HPD standard is maintained and continues to evolve under the guidance of the nonprofit HPD Collaborative, and was developed over the course of several years with input from many different groups, including manufacturers, designers, specifiers, material researchers. The first version of the HPD standard was released at Greenbuild in 2012, following a pilot program to test the draft format. With the approval of LEED version 4, the HPD then became one of only a few acceptable types of documentation for the MR credit for material ingredient reporting. And now we are anticipating the public release of version 2 of the HPD standard within the next month or so. So the HPD Collaborative seems to be well on its way to achieving its overarching goal, which is to provide an industry-accepted standard definition of what constitutes disclosure of a product's ingredients. All right, so now we're going to turn to the HPD itself to get a better idea of the type of information that's presented and how it's laid out. Now, as I mentioned, we are in the middle of transitioning to version 2 of the HPD, which has not yet been released to the public. So unfortunately, while I can't actually show you a version 2 HPD, what I can do is walk you through the basics and then discuss the changes that are coming to version 2. For those of you that are familiar with version 1, I think that you will be quite pleased with many of these changes. So for the HPD, disclosure means that not only are intentional ingredients identified, but also residuals that are known or expected to be found in the final product. And the health hazards that are associated with each of these must also be identified. Now, on the other hand, the HPD does not assess products of manufacture that don't appear in the final product. It also doesn't consider products of disposal or degradation or the health hazards associated with these. And finally, the HPD does not assess actual risks associated with use of the product, but exposure and risk information can be included in the ingredient notes if the manufacturer chooses to do so. All right, so the sections that make up the HPD include the summary, contents in descending order of quantity, certifications and compliance, accessory materials, any notes that the manufacturer wants to include, and then this last section, references, is a new addition to the HPD that we'll see in version 2. All right, so the summary is the first page of the published HPD, and again, version 2 will have a different format and look radically different, but the basic information will be the same, including listing the product name, classification, and reference to the product website, as well as a brief description of the product. Now, of course, the manufacturer's contact information will be given, as will the contact information for the person who was actually responsible for publishing the HPD. But in version 2, this information has been moved to the references section at the end. All right, this part of the summary section is giving the level of disclosure in the HPD. Now, there are several changes to note here for version 2. The first is for description of the disclosure threshold, this column on the left. Now, in version 1, we looked at residual disclosure on this scale, but for version 2, this is no longer the case. Instead, we're now looking for disclosure threshold per material. So what you're seeing below, the 100 parts per million, 1,000 parts per million, this is now going to be on a per material basis. All right, so what happened with residuals? Well, there's now a statement of the number of materials in which residuals and contaminants are considered. And of course, there's room in the notes section for further explanations of these. The next big change is that there are more detailed ways of explaining disclosure of intentional ingredients and hazards. So instead of these very basic descriptors, instead there are now more or less yes or no responses to confirm that all contents have been characterized, meaning that the percent weight and role have been provided for all contents. Are all contents screened for hazards using priority hazard lists with the results disclosed? Very important. And are all contents identified by name and identifiers such as with a CAS number? Now, also newly available in version 2 is the possibility of having third-party verification of the HPD performed by a group like NSF or UL. This is in addition to the possibility of being self-published, which was the only option available in version 1. All right, now the next part of the HPD summary in version 1 gave an overview of the reported hazards that were associated with the product's contents, and also gave a separate summary listing of product contents. Now, in version 2, and I know a lot of manufacturers are going to like this, these two merge to create a summary of product contents and hazard screening results that are now displayed in a paragraph-like format, with the GreenScreen scores and hazard endpoints listed out as abbreviations that are further defined in the references section at the end of the document. So this is a major change from how the hazards were presented in version 1 of the HPD. All right, the product's contents are listed in more detail in section 2, and there really aren't many differences expected in version 2, except again for formatting. So there's a space for the ingredient name, the CAS number, percent by weight that the ingredients found in the final product, claims of recycled content or nanotechnology, as well as the ingredient's role in the product. And of course, we also have areas for including information about the health hazards that are associated with each chemical or ingredient, the specific warnings that are referenced, and then the highest GreenScreen benchmark that has been assigned to that particular ingredient. All right, now obviously this barely touches on details of the HPD. As I mentioned, version 2 is expected to be released to the public in the next month or so. And in fact, I'm supposed to be on a call with the HPD Collaborative immediately after this webinar introducing version 2.0. So hopefully we'll be able to put out a much more detailed webinar soon that solely focuses on version 2 of the HPD. And we have already discussed a few of the changes coming to the next version. Some that I didn't talk about in detail are that upstream suppliers will now be able to directly input their data into the platform and can share this information with manufacturers to help them create their HPDs. There will also be details on how to disclose generic commodity materials like steel and aluminum and glass. And there will also be more detailed information on how to deal with complex assemblies in somewhat of a binder format. So again, we'll be offering updated information on these changes when version 2 is released, or as always, you can visit hpdcollaborative.org. All right, so switching gears a bit, the manufacturer inventory was also listed as a way to achieve the LEED v4 MR credit for material ingredients. But LEED didn't really give us much guidance as to how this inventory should be structured. Fortunately, a recent partnership has been formed between Clean Production Action, who are the folks behind GreenScreen, and Green Circle Certified to develop a how-to guide for creating a manufacturer inventory that qualifies for the LEED v4 credit, with Green Circle using its role as a third-party certification body to ensure compliance with LEED requirements. So essentially they want to put their stamp of approval that a particular manufacturer inventory qualifies for this LEED credit. All right, but so why would a manufacturer choose to pursue a manufacturer inventory instead of the HPD? Without getting myself in too deep, there are a number of concerns that have been raised against hazard-based disclosures. And the manufacturer inventory does not specifically require that manufacturers list the hazards that are associated with their material ingredients, as long as they have disclosed each of these ingredients by name and CAS number. So if we look at this chart, the 1,000 parts per million disclosure is the threshold required by LEED v4. So to qualify for this credit using HPD, all hazards must be disclosed for all ingredients, whether or not they're listed by specific name. On the other hand, for the manufacturer inventory, only those ingredients for which the name is withheld, such as for proprietary reasons, actually need to include hazard disclosure. So the manufacturer inventory would need to publicly disclose all non-proprietary ingredients by name and CAS number. For proprietary ingredients, the role, amount, and GreenScreen benchmark would need to be made publicly available. Now, again, this is still very much in early development, but if you are a manufacturer or industry professional who is interested in being involved in its development, Clean Production Action and Green Circle Certified would very much like to hear from you. They are working to set up a consensus group to develop the how-to document and get feedback on a pilot program. And they'd like to get rolling pretty quickly, so if you are interested, you can contact either Lauren Hine at Clean Production Action or Annie Bevan at Green Circle Certified. And if you didn't have time to write these down, just send us an email and we'll give you their contact information. So I know that was a lot in a short amount of time, but again, if you have any questions, if we don't get to you at the very end, please feel free to send us an email to follow up. And with that, I will turn it over to Terry, who will talk about the environmental reporting side of product disclosures.
Well, thank you very much, Tara. That was extremely informative. I learned a lot too. So while I figure out how to take the screen back, please be sure questions that you have, you can post those in the question pane, and we will either answer them during this call or we will follow up with you immediately after the call. So now that Tara has really done a really thorough job of explaining two of the types of material health analysis and reporting available to manufacturers, I'm going to dive into a little bit about environmental performance reporting and then talk about how that material health information can be used to either stand alone or complement environmental performance reporting to give a comprehensive view of manufacturers' products. So both Tara and I talked about, and I will be talking about, the demand and the need for manufacturers to design greener products. And to put a finer point on Tara's comments, the material ingredient analysis can be used initially by a manufacturer simply to benchmark their own products, to understand where in their own material ingredients are there potential hazardous ingredients that they may want to try to remove or improve. And if they don't remove or improve or find alternatives, to be able to substantiate that type of material remaining in the product for other types of reasons. Once a manufacturer feels confident in both the environmental performance or the material ingredients of products, then these tools can be used to bring that information credibly to the marketplace to help your customers and suppliers make greener decisions. And all of the same drivers that are driving the need to make greener products, like the cost of resources, environmental regulations, supply chain risk management, the ability to create new innovative products and ultimately generate more revenue, what really comes down to is building a brand and the power of a greener brand and what that power can do to creating preference in the marketplace for your products. Because as building owners and architects and AEC professionals are trying to respond to the increasing requirements for building performance, ultimately they can't read every single technical disclosure document that is brought to the market. When you think about all the ingredients that go into a building, ultimately we believe that the value for manufacturers to provide environmental performance information is in fact to build a credibly greener brand. And the way to do that is by demonstrating that as a manufacturer, you actually do know what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, making greener purchase decisions requires consistent, understandable, and meaningful information. So credible stories about the way you're making your products builds trust. Trust builds powerful brands, and trusted brands create preference and value for their companies. Now, both Tara and I have our continuous improvement loop diagram, and we like to say that a manufacturer can start wherever they're ready to start, either through getting started benchmarking their own products. Our flagship eco-concept and LCA software tool makes it easy for manufacturers in any industry to evaluate the environmental performance of their existing products, understand where the impacts are occurring so that they can easily generate new product concepts and understand where important performance improvements can be gained, hopefully make a better, greener product, and then get serious about using that information to market credibly greener products. And for that purpose, we developed the Sustainable Minds Transparency Report program, in fact, to help manufacturers take that environmental performance information and present it into the marketplace in a consistent, understandable, and meaningful way. With a particular eye to today, AEC professionals have bigger problems to address across the whole life cycle of the design and performance and maintenance of a building, and need access to information that helps them make better, more meaningful decisions. So today's environmental disclosure documents are PDFs that are stored in databases or in manufacturers' websites where that data is encoded in those documents and not available for multiple purposes like other types of calculations, other types of reports, and being available through a range of devices at any time. So having said that, we wanted to give you a snapshot of where Sustainable Minds fits in the PCR, LCA, EPD provider landscape because we are a software and services company. So we are a B2B cloud provider of environmental product transparency data, services, and applications. And we selected some other organizations that make LCA software and who are program operators and developers. What is unique about Sustainable Minds is that we are a program operator and developer. We are an LCA software provider. We will deliver LCA projects for clients, and we will verify LCAs that are done by other providers for our customers, but we're not certifiers, and we'll never be certifiers. It's not a business we want to be in. And frankly, as providers, cloud providers of environmental product transparency data, services, and applications, we want to make our products and services available to manufacturers through all of these other organizations, through LCA service providers, or to the LCA service provider within your own manufacturing organization. A transparency report is now an option as a deliverable, and that you can go to any program developer or operator and ultimately get a transparency report created from any existing PCR, or you can start a new PCR with Sustainable Minds with any of these program operators and developers. I'm actually foreshadowing a little bit of the announcement of our 2015 program, which you'll all hear about very shortly, so stay tuned. The background research that drove us to create the Transparency Report program was several years ago. We looked at many EPDs that were being provided by building product manufacturers and did an analysis of what's the content of these documents and how does it help somebody make a purchase decision about a product. And what you can see we found was that they're not in their current form and in their current content makeup particularly useful for either an AEC professional to easily make an informed greener decision and potentially even to help build a greener brand. So in response, we said, look, there really needs to be a holistic and comprehensive solution available to the market, because just changing one attribute or one part of the way standards programs are created and get delivered today won't ultimately achieve the bigger problem, which is to help people make better informed, greener purchase decisions more rapidly based on consistent and understandable and meaningful information. And so the bottom line is that all of the process that goes into creating the data is only the means to an end, which is to deliver the information in a way that it can be used. So we developed the Transparency Report, which enables manufacturers to leverage their investment in LCA to create the kind of information that helps make meaningful decisions and build a greener brand. Just to be clear, a transparency report is an ISO 14025 Type 3 environmental declaration. It's our brand of EPD. And the Transparency Report program allows for program operators, manufacturers, trade associations to easily get started on developing standardized PCRs at the product group level, delivers the transparency report, which now think of it as the reporting platform for adding all of the environmental types of information that are required today and that will be required in the future. So that it's a way to have it all in one place that complements the functional performance and design attributes of your products. So all of the information that somebody needs to make a decision is all in one place, and that data comes back to you in an easy-to-use tool for your product development teams to have that benchmarked data to be able to move forward with iteratively designing a greener product. So we're in the business of helping make better decisions, design decisions, marketing decisions, and ultimately purchase decisions. So how do we do that? The transparency report is a 3-page document. Again, it lives in the cloud, so it's database driven. The data is not encoded in a PDF. It links to wherever you would like to send customers, whether it's to your website or social media or other marketing websites. And I'll show you the power of the linking capability in just a moment. But what we determined was that if somebody wants to make a purchase decision fairly rapidly, they want all the information about that product right on the front page. So here in the performance dashboard, you have all the features and functionality. It can link to the manufacturer's website. And here you have the environmental performance features and attributes. Again, can link to any of the eco labels or standards that support it. Again, to the manufacturer's website. And the footer, which is a standardized format, makes it very clear the level of verification and certification of the LCA in the report, the scope of the LCA that's included in the report, the certifier and verifier, and on every page is a contact button that sends people through to that manufacturer to help make informed, better decisions. Page 2 is where the LCA results are described in the simplest, most comprehensive and succinct way with interpretation. So here's the technical information about the LCA, what was found in the LCA, and here's interpretation of what does it mean. And right here, the manufacturer can start talking about the programs that they've put in place or are putting in place in response to what they learned through the LCA to improve the environmental performance of their products. Here are the full LCA results, and what we've brought through is the whole modular LCA framework. So it's in a glance, you can see what information modules were included in that LCA with a very quick description of what's contributing greater than 20% of the impacts in each of those life cycle stages. You have the full LCA results, and then at the bottom, the links to the references and the value in the various rating systems. Page 3, which is optional, but is actually the most interesting part, is where the manufacturer can tell real stories about what they're doing to make greener products and improve the environmental performance in each life cycle stage. So as I mentioned, page 2 is LCA results and interpretation. The left side has the scope and summary, and the right side has the interpretation, what's causing the greatest impacts. Here in the references section is the reference to the background report, which the manufacturer can choose to make public. It's not required, but they can. And you can link to and read the components of the PCR that drove the requirements for this LCA. And again, what the document earns in the relative rating systems. So looking at the grid, if you will, of page 2, it's a standardized template where you'll be able to find the same content for every product within a manufacturer's product line and across and between manufacturers' products. So you've got the scope, the attributes, the summary, interpretation and explanation, detailed data and results, and references, links to information sources and rating systems. Now, LEAD offers 3 different ways to earn credit. In this particular credit, the transparency report is a type 3 EPD. Just a verified LCA earns you a quarter of a credit. An industry average EPD earns a little bit more, and the type 3 EPD earns the full product credit. Now, in the material ingredient reporting credit, as Tara outlined, LEAD provides 3 tools, 3 material ingredient analysis methods for reporting on what they're putting in their products. The manufacturer inventory, the health product declaration, and cradle to cradle. Now, both the manufacturer and inventory and the health product declaration are driven by GreenScreen in the background. Cradle to cradle has its own methodology, and as Tara mentioned, is quite different and robust. And so today we won't go into that detail, but what we will say is that the material health overview has been designed to accommodate and explain the disclosure information that results from any one of those 3 types of material ingredient analyses, so that anyone looking to make a decision about a product can understand the technical information about what's in the product, and then the interpretation about how the manufacturer is contributing to making a healthier product, or calling out, what are the greatest health concerns. So in the context of a transparency report, if a manufacturer wants to provide both LCA-based information and material ingredient information, we simply add a second tab, or we create 2 tabs on page 2. So now the user can toggle between life cycle assessment and material health information. So the material health overview was designed to answer 4 questions quickly. Because when you think about how much time somebody has to be able to make a decision about a product, we determined that what they really want to know is, are there any hazardous ingredients in the product? If yes, how bad are they? What are the exposure concerns? And what's the company doing to improve the human health impacts? So remembering the results and interpretation layout, material health overview is changeable in the left column based on the way the screening is done and the disclosure parameters, so the technical information. So this changes up depending upon what type of material ingredient analysis was done, whether it was an HPD, whether a full GreenScreen or GreenScreen list translator was used to drive analyze the manufacturer's inventory, or whether it's cradle to cradle certified. What's the same is the manufacturer's interpretation of what the results mean. Now, what we found was interesting, and I think this was really helpful in Tara's explanation. There are 3 options for manufacturers to choose how to analyze and disclose this information. And based on those options, one or more is going to probably be, or one, is going to be preferred based on the manufacturer's own knowledge of its products and concerns about reporting. So as Tara pointed out, in the manufacturer inventory, hazard disclosure is not required. It's only required when you do not list the CAS number or the actual ingredient. So that's great for trade secrets ingredients. You don't have to disclose what they are. You only have to disclose if they're hazardous. Otherwise, if you're listing the full ingredient list with CAS number, no hazards need to be listed. And this is actually, I think, an option for manufacturers who are very concerned about reporting hazards. The real value here in any of these opportunities is to provide meaningful interpretation. And so what you're seeing on the right here is our template language for manufacturers to decide how they want to use that zone. So here's the guidance that we provide. We ask the manufacturer to look at the disclosure information and consider what questions the user might ask from seeing that information. And they can write this from one of two perspectives. It can be self-declared stories from manufacturers' own information or their own internal testing about how the product is made. It's not a legal statement, so we encourage explanation. Or they can use that space to provide scientifically based explanations, either from their own toxicological risk assessment or from a third party expert assessment, depending upon, again, the ingredients that might be disclosed and what they want to tell you about it. So if a product is cradle to cradle certified, there's not going to be any ingredients that have risks associated with it. But other products may certainly contain ingredients that show up as having hazards associated with those ingredients, and the manufacturer very likely has a good explanation for why those ingredients remain in the product. And then you get to choose. So the sections of the template include what's in the product and why, and these are some of the things we suggest the manufacturer might write about: why the product qualifies for any of the green ratings or eco labels, discuss the material choices, comment on trade-offs between functional and environmental performance, industry standards or requirements, comment on the ingredients that show up as the greatest percentage by weight, and if they are showing up as potentially hazardous. Have alternatives been considered or implemented? If yes, were there trade-offs between functional and environmental performance? The next section is about product handling and exposure concerns. What's been done in the design of the manufacture of the product in consideration of those potential impacts? And again, speak directly to the ingredients that are showing up in the disclosure statement. And further, really, are there any concerns that the user should have about exposure in the use phase? Finally, the manufacturer has the option to make the statement right there on the page about any programs they've implemented or are investigating and their goals and plans for improvement, which very clearly goes to the manufacturer saying, yes, we understand what's in our products. Yes, we see we have room for improvement, or we've already made those improvements. And this is what the path forward could look like. And this page, this box, can link to page 3 of the report, where now the manufacturer can tell an integrated life cycle story of what they're doing across the product's life cycle to improve performance and material health all in one place. Now, if you are a manufacturer who wants to get started disclosing, reporting material health, you haven't yet done LCAs or you don't plan to do LCAs, we do have a standalone version of the material health overview that provides the opportunity for the manufacturer, again, to deliver all the content somebody would need to make a purchase decision. So all of the content on page 1 in the dashboard, the content from page 2, and a little bit more limited section about the how we make it greener content. All of this, all of the types of different transparency products that we offer can be accessed through your own individual manufacturer showroom. So as you create more transparency products, they can be found here. This page can be linked to from the manufacturer's website, from any other websites where people find information about products. And again, the content is available for reuse. Longer term, the idea is that because the information is being reported in a standardized, structured way, but branded your brand and not the brand of a program developer or a certifier, and doesn't require the end user to pour through a lengthy technical document, it allows for streamlined, understandable, meaningful, and ultimately easier to make comparative decisions. So to wrap it up, Sustainable Minds transparency products allow you to integrate environmental performance and material health information into credible marketing tools that make that information understandable and meaningful and effectively present your greener brand. And that brings us to the top of the hour. Tara has had to jump off to attend the HPD webcast. You can contact her directly, which we encourage you to do. Tara is an Elixir is a Sustainable Minds partner, as we do not deliver material ingredient analysis services. Elixir does. We are agnostic about the type of report. As you've seen, we're in the business of helping manufacturers leverage that information to help customers make meaningful choices at the end of the day. We have a few questions that have come in, although I think I may have touched on answers to most of them. We will be following up. There was a question about, is the Declare label not considered to be a USGBC approved program for LEED V4 material optimization and material ingredients? It is currently not in the credit language. I don't know whether it's being considered or whether it will be added as a USGBC approved program. I think that's a question to send to BIFMA or to send to the USGBC. So to wrap up, yes, we've recorded the webcast. Attendees will have access to the deck, and we will be sending out information about when that's available shortly. It should be available this week. So having said that, I wanted to thank you once again for staying the course, joining us here in snowy, really cold Boston, where we're all just trying to do our best to stay warm and get to work and stay focused. So same to you, and hope to talk to you soon. Thanks so much.